Lamar Joseph Odom, born November 6, 1979. The story of Lamar Odom is a very complicated one to follow that has many sides to it, and depending on your perspective, his story can range from borderline all-star to transcendent utility player that was the culmination of what Marcus Johnson, Larry Bird, John Johnson, and Paul Pressey laid the groundwork for in a position we now know as the point forward. Unfortunately, what many remember him as is the troubled former reality TV star that displayed his life falling apart to the world in a sad transition to retirement. But honestly, that part of Lamar Odom was such a small scene in his life, and most certainly not the highlight of this once brilliant basketball player that had insane tools for his size and fit like a glove on just about every team he's played for, even with some of the toughest leaders. He truly could have played in any era, especially today, where he would be a superstar. Keyword, would. You see, that's just the thing. He would have been recognized as an all-star in his era as well had it not been for these three things. He still had a standout basketball career where he was a two-time NBA champion, Sixth Man of the Year, and a lot more that we'll get into. He's had to overcome some of the toughest trials to get where he got, and really shouldn't be shamed into this narrative that people want to create of his time on earth as a drug-addicted mess-up, because as a hooper, Lamar Odom was the blueprint to a lot of what you saw after him. Let's get into it. Salute to everyone that's requested him. I've literally been asked to feature him for many years now, and finally put aside my reverence for him as a basketball player and bringing it to you, because his story can be a great learning tool for all walks of life. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Ash, get it, man. Lamar Odom was a 6'10" point forward from Queens, New York that lost his mother at the young age of 12 years old and never really knew his father, who struggled with addiction, making him absentee. Lamar was taken care of by his grandmother while also finding a lot of comfort in the streets and on local playgrounds in the city, as this could be where he developed his ability to handle the ball, because if it's one thing we know about playing basketball in New York, you have to know how to dribble and excite the crowd. Throughout high school, Odom excelled at every level, but moved around a bit before finally, as a senior, playing for St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Connecticut. He became the Parade National Player of the Year in a stacked 97 class and McDonald's All-American that had a slight chance at jumping straight to the league had he been mentally ready to do so, and in his own words, had he been disciplined enough to stay at his first school, Christ the King in Queens, where he could have went straight to the league and would have changed the course of his life. What's up, guys? Become a patron now. There you can find exclusive workouts, move breakdowns, and tutorials to help your development in certain areas. Also, receive consulting each week with me where I help break down your game and build you into the player you want to become. Patreon.com/stuntedgrowth for more. Link is in the description. Enjoy the video. Stunt number 1, maturity, discipline, and drafted 4th. The first growth stunt for Lamar Odom comes as not entirely his fault, but at the end of the day, no one's going to make that excuse for you in that situation. Lamar simply wasn't exactly equipped in these ways to handle the gifts he'd been given at such an early time in his life and NBA career. A lot of this can be credited to it being because of his upbringing, where he didn't have the leadership and guidance to help teach him at the time, losing his mother at 12 and never having that father figure around. If you know anything about being raised by a grandparent solely, you know or could imagine that there's only so much that one figure, especially it being a female, can do to raise a growing young man that has all this potential and talent to make millions of dollars one day. Aside from that, just teaching him the things he should be ready for as a guardian 2 generations removed, with the world being that much different for him, is impossible to do, and it led Lamar Odom basically having to learn on the fly and deal with the consequences. The fact he even made it to the NBA in the hasty time he did is truly astonishing. But aside from that, he was lacking in areas like him being mature and disciplined enough to understand what he had and how to take care of it. The lack of this led to him losing out on his initial scholarship to UNLV for questions surrounding the validity of his SAT score and taking money from a booster. Also for his arrest for conduct issues that were all too foretelling of what would become of his later life. He then enrolled at Rhode Island, where he became a star in his lone season, averaging 17.6 points a game, 4 assists, and 9.4 rebounds, and leading them to the NCAA tournament. He was taken 4th overall in the '99 NBA draft, and his maturity and discipline issues followed him to the NBA, where in just his 3rd season, he began to get suspended for breaking the drug policy multiple times, as he just couldn't seem to leave them alone. Was it in his blood, or was it another foreshadow of what was to come? Either way, these maturity and discipline issues caused Lamar Odom to not develop into what his full potential could have been. In his own words, he states that being just 2 picks later to Minnesota with Kevin Garnett and being able to learn under him could have changed his career drastically, as KG knew what it took for a young star to blossom and how to connect with said star. And I have to agree. Stunt number 2, inconsistency. The lack of maturity and discipline also led to Lamar Odom not being as consistent over the years as he maybe could have been, that could have taken him over the wall of borderline all-star. Beginning his first 4 years with the Clippers, Odom's play looked as advertised, as he came in and made first-team All-Rookie, averaging 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists on a bad Clippers team that won 15 games and missed the playoffs. He improved in year 2 across the board, and although the team missed the playoffs again, Odom showed consistent improvement on the floor, along with being available, playing 76 games both seasons. In his 3rd year is when things started to get shaky, and he would miss games due to suspension for failing the league's drug policy in that year and the following. Whatever his drug of choice, to which he later admitted to it being weed, his play began to slip drastically by year 4 from his rookie and sophomore seasons. Granted, the team didn't provide much encouragement, as they were a bottom-feeding team over his time there, but I think had Lamar taken that opportunity more seriously and worked on being more consistent, he could have become a really good player for a franchise looking for its next star. Individually, he could have helped himself as well and made at least one all-star team with how good he could have been with a little more focus and less missed games and inconsistent play. A lot of his inconsistency could be the way he as a person is made up. Lamar doesn't strike me as an aggressive person in any situation, and his play suggested as much, as time and time again, he'd be in the game where he could dominate his competition and chose not to. Instead, his passive nature allowed weaker defenders to stay with him as he deferred to other players. It led to him being placed in a box of 2nd or 3rd thought on most the teams he was on that he didn't try to aggressively get out of and push himself to be great. He did win 2 championships this way, but individually he could have done a little more by just changing or becoming a different animal on the floor. Stunt number 3, overwhelming issues. The final stunt in Lamar Odom's growth as a basketball player, in my opinion, was because he just had too much going on off the court at one point to allow him to focus on playing basketball, and it curtailed the later part of his career when he was still a pretty good player. After being signed by the Heat for year 5, Lamar put up some of the best numbers of his career and was looking like the perfect fit next to Eddie Jones and rookie Dwayne Wade. He was the second leading scorer behind Jones and led the team in rebounds. The Heat included him in a deal after the season that brought Shaq to Miami and sent Odom to the Lakers. The story of his Lakers career is well documented, capped off by his 2 championships and 3 straight finals appearances, in large part to Odom's play. But being in LA opened him up to everything that was bad for him as a player. In 2009, he meets and marries reality star Khloe Kardashian and begins juggling life in the spotlight of the reality TV world while also dealing with death all around him, including the death of a 15-year-old in 2010 riding his bike on the sidewalk when a motorcycle hits him due to a car Lamar was being driven in hitting the motorcycle. This is right after he leaves from seeing his cousin laid to rest. With everything going on and Lamar not being the type to take control of his life aggressively, his play on the court became a distraction and he was traded to the Dallas Mavericks after the 2010-11 season after mutually agreeing to leave the team. Slightly feeling disrespected, LA wanted to trade him for Chris Paul that was eventually vetoed by David Stern. His lone season in Dallas was horrible, and Lamar hated Dallas as a team and never wanted to be there. Then the situation with Mark Cuban kicking him for his poor play literally saw Lamar and the team part ways. He was averaging 14 points a game with the Lakers, along with 9 rebounds and 3 assists. With Dallas, his play never came close to that, and he was simply checked out and probably hurt by the actions of the Lakers as a franchise. Around that time in his life, I don't think basketball was his main focus, and it showed in his play, and no other team picked him up after being traded to the Clippers, signing but not appearing with the Knicks, and a small overseas stint. All in all, Lamar Odom's career did not end and at times go the way it could have outside his time with the Lakers for these reasons. I really think he thought the Lakers was his home and that he meant more to Kobe and the franchise, and when they tried to trade him and basically say, "Yeah, we did," it really killed him on and off the court. That trade to Dallas sent his entire life spiraling, and he would end up on heavy drugs, losing his marriage, having 12 strokes, and the story goes on. But in respects to Odom, he was a tremendous athlete that I wish had a different temperament to go along with his skills. He still had a great career that, had it ended better, he may have been an all-star at some point and possibly a Hall of Famer. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.